The mics are hot and things are live. So, as we count down today's program, we got to start with some breaking Broncos news, Mace. How about that, huh?
What is it they used to say on the Daily Show? When news breaks, we fix it.
There was a sweet spot for like comedy and for like that type of stuff. Like I think the Daily Show was within that sweet spot. It's not the same anymore.
When was it? You're talking about when Jon Stewart was hosting?
Jon Stewart, yep. And everyone was young. Like John Oliver was on that show. Like so many people came through that show.
Stephen Colbert
came through that show. So
I didn't know if we were going for the deep cut, going all the way back to the Craig Kilborn years.
No, Kilborn, he was ESPN, right?
And then he was Daily Show.
Yes.
And then he was late night on CBS. And then he seems to have vanished off the face of the earth.
Yeah, sometimes happens. There was that one guy on E that had the patch in his head of the gray hair. You remember him? He was on, what was the show with the big balls? The game show where they'd run around and get thrown off stuff. Wipeout. He was the host of Wipeout with the other ESPN guy. So like ESPN anchors, they like do other stuff, and then you're like, hey, I remember you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then sometimes they just vanish completely. It's like, or they go to news. Like Robin Roberts went to Good Morning America.
Yes.
Like
yes.
she moved up the chain.
Right.
Would you say Dan Patrick moved up, or did he just kind of?
He just does his own thing, basically.
He probably makes more money because he's his own.
He's doing his own thing, right? Yeah.
So, anyway.
So you move on, you go places. Keith Olbermann went nuts. Anyway, it's orange and blue today.
Perspective.
I think everybody would think that, but
like, I think whether you're left or right, kind of think
you kind of think
he's gone a little bit.
Calm down there, buddy.
Yeah.
Right. Switch to decaf. Orange and blue today is presented by Sean Honda. See, this is where we come together, Mace. We come together talking about the Denver Broncos.
Moderation?
You never really answered your fashion faux pas, though. Off the air, I was asking you about your fashion faux pas.
Because here's the thing. In my opinion, from my perspective, because my style is basically unchanged over the decades, I'm not the one making the faux pas. The rest of the world's making the faux pas. I mean, look, I'll just give you an example here. All right. I was going through my wardrobe recently, and I found a T-shirt that I bought in 2008, not 2000 and late. Don't
do that when I'm drinking.
Yeah, and yes, it's still in my wardrobe. It's a sleep shirt now, but
okay.
And then it was an Atlanta Braves T-shirt from Nike, and then I found a Nike Braves T-shirt that I bought 10 years later. Right, same size in terms of the size on the tag, but one is substantially smaller than the other. Why? Because it's the modern cut, the slim, the hugging it close to the body that is in style. I don't like that. I don't like the feeling of fabric that tight. So everything got sleeker, and I'm like, wait a minute. Like this shirt, it says it's the same size, but it's not actually the same size. So it's like, what's going on here? And everyone seems to like that modern slim look, and I'm like, no, I like to wear ballroom pants. Plenty of ballroom.
Orange and blue today, everybody. This is how the show starts. The Broncos signed Nick Williams. We saw him at rookie minicamp. CSU Pueblo, Cherry Creek High School, I believe, top of my head. And, of course, UNLV. Big-bodied wide receiver, and yet another receiver is added to the room. And they get rid of a running back. So we can talk about Nick Williams. You and I are very adept at doing that, Mace. But, okay, you kind of need running backs, and they keep adding guys to cut running backs.
Yeah, it's fascinating because last week, of course, you make a move, you bring in a tight end, you cut a running back, and now it's Demaria Crockett who's cut. Of course, he's in a tough spot coming off of the ACL injury that he had last year in camp. So a little bit of a numbers game for him, but you start looking at the running back room now, and maybe some of this is you want to get Javonte Williams some work as you're bringing him back in the rehab process. But also, I think it's just a case of running backs, especially on the back end of the depth chart, being relatively fungible assets and, frankly, interchangeable.
Yeah.
You can find somebody else. I mean, shoot, for all we know, we saw how last Thursday they emphasized third downs. It may be a practice emphasis that, okay, we need another receiver because we're going to do, we're going to do more 3 wide sets this week, and we just need an extra body in there, especially with some of the receivers that like Tim Patrick still working their way back.
Yeah, and you get a guy with size and Nick Williams. I think it's a nice move for this time of year. We'll see what he can do. Maybe angling for the practice squad. For me, Mace, I think of a few things. Not revealing what we saw at minicamp or OTAs, but they like Tony Jones. You and I like Tony Jones. We saw him, I think it was at the Trop, at the Shrine Bowl. Oh, I loved it when it was at the Trop. It's going to be in Dallas next year. You know that?
Well, not Dallas, Frisco. I mean, basically, Frisco is far enough from Dallas. It would be like,
it's going to be in Jerry's World.
It's at the Star.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
It's going to be out at the Star, which is interesting. I don't know if you've reached out to your people with the Shrine. Is this a function of the Super Bowl being in Vegas next year?
I'm not sure. And then where's the Pro Bowl? Like, I don't know. I thought they were going to go where the Pro Bowl went.
And I thought so. And I thought they were actually excited about being in the same place as the Super Bowl, but maybe logistically, it's in terms of getting things prepped, maybe things weren't available.
Okay.
So that's my theory on it, because I imagine in Super Bowl prep, one team's going to use the Raiders facilities, and one team's going to use UNLV.
UNLV has great facilities.
They're phenomenal facilities, especially for a Mountain West caliber school. But the thing is, they would be out of there 3 or 4 days before the NFL teams arrive. So for the Super Bowl. So it's curious, but yeah, the Shrine's going to be at the Star in Frisco this year.
Okay. Well, we saw it at the Trop, and
which location wise, it's like saying that it's in Denver when it's actually taking place down in Castle Rock. It's a hike.
It is a hike.
Yes.
And just when I got used to where to stay in Vegas, stay within walking distance of the practice field, dude.
I'll tell you one thing that is good though. It was a little bit of a challenge to get from Vegas to Mobile. It's not going to be a challenge getting from Dallas to Mobile.
No, not at all.
As they're back to back. In fact, probably can.
Wow, I'm just to do that drive.
How long is that drive?
Probably 7 hours. I drove from Houston to Mobile once, and I think it was 8 hours.
Okay, but I mean, you're talking
Houston's
about
closer
from southern Texas to
from Dallas is different.
Let's see.
Dallas to Mobile, Alabama.
Frisco, Texas. Woo! It's a little more than you thought. Because remember,
you
Dallas
go
is
down.
farther north. You got to go down. It's 9 hours and 26 minutes.
It's not bad.
It's 609 miles. It's about the same. It's a little bit farther than driving from here in Denver to Omaha.
I'll see what flights are like, because flying into Mobile is a nightmare.
Well,
flying to Pensacola.
I always fly to Pensacola or New Orleans. But here's the thing. Like Dallas to Pensacola, you got flights. I would imagine, and we are way off.
Apologize.
Sorry. We're nerding out on draft talk here. But I would reckon that you could watch the Monday practices out in Frisco, get down to DFW or Love Field, catch your flight to Pensacola, and then be ready to go for the Tuesday practices, and just pretty smooth.
Monday might not be a travel day.
Maybe that is also part of the reasoning for doing this, is that getting from Vegas to Mobile, because there were no nonstop flights. So you're either taking a nonstop flight to like New Orleans and then driving, or you're connecting. But that was kind of a day-long process getting from Vegas to Mobile. And I wonder if, because the Shrine now pushes later than it used to be, I wonder if that's part of the reason why they're making this change as well. Because the Shrine is priding itself on being very media and scout friendly.
Very scout friendly.
And
maybe the Senior Bowl should move.
And perhaps, and I was
sorry, Jim Nagy.
Well, it's going to stay in Mobile for now. For now, we'll see.
Right.
But I wonder if this is maybe a move to accommodate those who try to get to both. Christopher says, remember, what happens in Vegas doesn't always stay in Vegas.
I'll remember that.
I see what you did there. I still try to think of my fashion faux pas.
Yes, your fashion faux pas.
To me, it's fashion making faux pas, not my fashion faux pas.
Okay. All right. Mace is classic. We'll just say that.
I'm boring is actually what I am.
Tony Jones is Well,
a guy we like.
he's a guy we like, and
Yes.
he's a guy the Broncos like. So when they get rid of another running back, it kind of makes me go, why? But then knowing what we know, Mace, we can say, hey, because he worked with Sean Payton in New Orleans, I think Tony Jones has a shot at making this team. Nobody talks about him.
Nobody talks about him. He's very much under the radar. But right now, you're looking at this roster, and you've got 5 running backs. Okay. And that's not counting Michael Burton, the fullback. Of course, you've got Javonte Williams. You got Samaje Perine, Jaleel McLaughlin. You've heard us talk about him at length. Tyler Badie and Tony Jones Jr. Right now, you look at those 5 and say, it's possible all 5 are still on this team in some capacity once they've set the practice squad.
Right.
Could easily see Williams, Perine, Jones as your 3 on the 53. And then Badie and McLaughlin as your practice squad backs, if you can slip them through. You've actually got enough to kind of get through a practice. I'm sure they'll add one more either before training camp or early in training camp because of attrition. But right now, you're talking about low contact work. I think they've probably got enough to get through.
Yeah, they've got their guys, that's for sure. Tom's saying getting room for Dalvin Cook. Yeah, well, maybe.
We shall see.
Unless Miami gets him, because everyone says Miami, so we'll see.
RBCC. I mean,
RBBC.
Is that what you meant?
Report. Running back by committee. RBBC.
A running back community college. Is there a community college that is particularly adept at producing running backs?
I don't know. I went to
Like
Last
one in
Chance
Kansas?
Cowboy College, so
Yeah.
there's probably a junior college that's good at running backs.
Yeah, that would
Or
be-
like Blinn Junior College or
Exactly.
something like that.
Something like that would be
Mhm.
RBCC.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. There you go. Ken, we love you as well.
Love you too, Ken.
I
Maybe
want
he's
to.
talking about the running backs and not us.
Maybe. Maybe. You never know. People are like, could you please talk about the Broncos and less about your fashion? I want to bring up Justice League
What
number
about the
50.
Shrine?
Exactly. And there's travel plans for January. I want to talk about Justice League 50. That is a deep cut, but that's the first time it was revealed there are 3 Jokers. Did you know that, Mace?
3 Jokers?
There's 3 Jokers. Batman sat in the Lazarus chair or whatever, and he could ask one question and get the answer to. He said, "Who's the Joker?"
Okay.
And he was given the answer. There's 3 of them. I want to talk about 3 Jokers because as I wrote in Mile High Monday, this Greg Dulcich stuff, we got to pump the brakes, everybody. Okay, like Greg Dulcich is physically gifted. He's got great hair. He's athletic. He's fast. He's got ball skills. Like, we know the good things. The physical stuff about Greg Dulcich is easy to see. However, and as my man Reggie McDaniel always used to say, there's always a however in life. I went back and I watched Adam Troutman's every catch from New Orleans. And I watched a game from 2021, catching passes from Trevor Siemian.
Mm-hmm.
He had 5 for 85 and a touchdown, I believe, against Philadelphia, week 11 of that season.
Yeah.
And guess what he was playing?
Joker.
He was playing the Joker. Guess what Ty Montgomery played for the Saints? The Joker. Guess what Taysom Hill played for the Saints?
Joker with a soft J.
With the soft J, Joker. So there are multiple Jokers with Sean Payton.
And they always called Taysom Hill the Joker, even though he was sometimes lining up at quarterback, taking the snap.
Right.
You could be a Joker. It's basically a way of describing somebody who doesn't have a set position in the traditional sense.
Right.
In the Sean Payton offense.
So we need to
QB Joker, running back Joker, tight end Joker. Seems like the only Joker you really can't have is a wide receiver.
Right.
That's pretty well set in stone.
Yeah. And so when everyone's going nuts about Greg Dulcich, and again, the physical stuff's easy to see, everybody. I'm not here to say Greg Dulcich can't play. We know he can't. He can't stay healthy. That's what he can't do.
Well,
but who are the other Jokers that could come through? Because I think Troutman could still be. Troutman at Dayton was what do you have, 14 touchdowns his last season?
I'm surprised that he didn't develop more as a pass catcher. I thought,
and it takes time for tight ends.
I thought he'd be a nice candidate to go the Dallas Goedert route.
Yes.
It hasn't quite happened for Troutman yet, but you do have to be patient with those guys.
And could it now happen? Because he had that one season without Sean Payton.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's back. Payton gave up 4 draft picks to get him. And when he was with New Orleans, he trades for him. He clearly likes the guy. And again, Greg Dulcich can play, everybody. We all need to calm down and pump the brakes on this Joker thing because there will be multiple Jokers. And I think 1, Troutman's their starter. This is me just saying. Troutman's the starter. And 2, he's a former quarterback. That receiving ability is still there, Mace.
I mean, really, the guy who might be in trouble is Albert Okwuegbunam, even though you look at his skill set as a pass catcher and you think, okay, he could be a joker as well,
Right.
potentially.
Right.
But as of right now, reading the tea leaves, you're seeing Troutman and Dulcich looking more like they're going to have the prominent roles. Partially, for Troutman, it's the connection with Sean Payton. For Greg Dulcich, it's everything that was mentioned last week that we can actually talk about because Sean Payton talked about it.
Thank you. Yeah,
we can ask another question like that on Thursday.
Exactly. Get that hell of an answer.
I feel like I wrote a lot of stories for people this week by asking that question.
Yes, and that's the frustrating thing. This is off topic Monday, by the way. But when you ask questions specifically for what you're wanting to know or what you're wanting to write, and then everybody writes off of your question, you get no credit for it. Whatever. We've
all done it.
But the problem is, and yes, I'm going to sound like a snob when I say that, not all questions are good questions. So we waste time at a press conference with, tell us about this rule change or whatever, instead of actual football conversation.
In my opinion, every question should be either about the roster, like asking about the kickers is okay in the wake of McManus being cut,
of course, yeah,
and Elliott Fryer being brought in. That or something that actually happened in the practice.
Yes,
a play. Like I asked about Greg Dulcich because he was making plays in practice, and you could see the use there. The other thing is I have some notes from last Thursday, and I'm going to see obviously what transpires this coming Thursday, but I already have a few specific players about whom I'd like to ask based on what I've seen from them in OTA so far.
3 jokers
that hopefully will lead to as illuminating a response as the one Sean Payton gave on Greg Dulcich. That's my hope.
A big reveal. Yes. Before we move on from 3 jokers
Thursday and listen for me trying to screen my question.
Trying to edge in there. Just start with a consonant. I've also learned that.
Consonant.
You start with a consonant.
So you want like a hard sound?
You don't want a soft sound. You're trying to talk over everyone. Cortland Sutton is really fast this year.
It's got to be a hard consonant.
A hard consonant.
So it can't be like, S. It's got to be like it's got to
tell us why.
It's got to be a t, k.
That's about it. I think you're t and cuz. Yep. That's right.
Okay.
Tuca.
My name is Tuca. I live on the 2nd floor.
My name is Tuco. I'm in Breaking Bad. We are way off track, but 3 jokers.
Way off track? That implies we started on track.
We did not start on track. Can you give me a couple of jokers from this roster? Who else could be a joker for this team?
Okay, I said it couldn't be.
Because you mentioned a couple running backs that might be joker worthy.
Jaleel McLaughlin could be a joker.
Yes, 100%.
It's interesting because Sean Payton, in the course of his response to my question, mentioned Darren Sproles, mentioned Reggie Bush. Darren Sproles, in terms of the frame and size, that's where you say, okay, yeah, I could see Jaleel McLaughlin doing that. So definitely, I'd say Jaleel McLaughlin. I mentioned Albert Okwuegbunam from the tight end position.
I think he'd be great in that role.
Get him in space, see what he can do, take advantage of his skill set. I do think that the other thing is also with Greg Dulcich. Sean Payton said they're developing a vision for him, and seeing what he's done in practice is the genesis, the embryonic stage of that vision. So we're probably, when we're talking about Greg Dulcich and how he's going to be used, we're maybe looking over the horizon a little bit. But part of what they are doing in OTAs is they're figuring out which guys can do which things. They are working on formulating visions for players. And so that is probably the most fascinating thing going on right now in a big picture perspective, is that with each player, they're figuring out what their capabilities are and how they can be used properly.
I love that. I love the developing of a vision for these players is what good coaching staffs do. And that's why the surface level stuff, when he mentioned Joker and he mentioned all these players that made plays, no one's talking about Ty Montgomery, who was a joker. No one's talking about Adam Troutman. What's Adam Troutman's career high in catches? Like 21? Are we really going to lose our mind if Greg Dulcich catches 21 passes this year? No. And my emphasis, and I love being a contrarian, Mason, and again, fully recognizing that Greg Dulcich can play, but I also like looking away because the crowd is saying, oh my God, Greg Dulcich can play. I'm like,
Broncos fans want Greg Dulcich
to
succeed.
Yes.
Because he's a reasonably high draft pick and he endeared himself to him last year. I think one thing that does happen, I don't mean to to disregard fandom. I'm a sports fan. You're a sports fan, right? I've got my teams that I love, but the thing that I really understand from being a fan is that sometimes my view is not rational. In my experience as an Atlanta Braves fan, for example, every player is either better or worse than I believe them to be with my fandom. Like, in other words, like,
It's a good way of putting it.
what I mean is like this: if a player is struggling, then I'm going to be like, okay, that guy's awful, right? Terrible. Cut him now. Designate him for assignment, whatever. And it turns out he's not that bad, right? When you're a fan, sometimes the view goes to the extremes. With Greg Dulcich, it's the extreme positive because there were those flashes, there were those glimpses. Reality tends to end up bringing the what the player actually is down a little bit. So, like with Russell Wilson, for example, the view right now is, oh, he's going to get all the way back to being an elite level, or he sucks. There are very few people, comparatively speaking, saying it's somewhere in between. I think you and I think Russell Wilson this year is going to fall somewhere in between, which may lead to that discussion of, okay, where does he go from here? And is it worth having him back in 2024 and throwing another $37.5 million of guaranteed money?
Right. See, Greg says, I'm not a contrarian. I was just wrong. How was I wrong about Dulcich? I said he can play. I had a 3rd round grade on him. How was I wrong? Seriously, how was I wrong? This is the problem with the Greg Dulcich hype train. It's like, he's the greatest ever. Let's put him in the Hall of Fame, everybody. No one should be saying that.
Well, and Sean Payton made it very clear, even though he name dropped Jeremy Shockey, Jason Witten, and Jimmy Graham, 2 really good players and 1 all-timer that he coached. Even though he name dropped those 3, he didn't say that Greg Dulcich was at the level of those 3.
He went out of his way to say, I'm not saying he's those 3.
Exactly. I mean, listen to what the man says.
Yes. So we all can be excited about Greg Dulcich, but we also know that the Joker position isn't just his and his alone.
You know, Sean Payton actually drops a lot of stuff and insight in there.
He does.
If you listen to him, as far as what he believes and what he sees.
Yes.
Actually listen to the man.
So it kind of leads into the next topic as we're off track, but the Mr. Nice Guy thing, like this last week, he was chattier. I'm hoping that on Thursday, he continues to be chatty because if you parse what he says, there's a lot of football knowledge. And I wrote about it on Mile High Monday, Mace. I, as a football junkie, love listening to Sean Payton talk about football because he's going to tell you stuff, maybe stuff he shouldn't even tell you. But if you're listening and you can sparse it, you're going to understand what he's saying.
The piece I'm finishing for denversports.com actually dives into what he said about the kicker position and looks back at how he finally got the kicker he wanted. Because he cycled through 10 kickers in 10 seasons. I thought it was 9. It was 10. There was a kicker who actually had a field goal attempt, but not an extra point attempt. I think it was Billy Cundiff.
Okay.
I was overlooking. And then in his last season, went through 4 kickers because Will Lutz was hurt. You know how they got Will Lutz? He was cut by the Ravens. They had him and Justin Tucker, pardon me. And Justin Tucker wasn't losing that job, right? So they cut Will Lutz. They bring him in for a tryout. Originally, they were going to sign Lutz to the practice squad, and Lutz did so well, they decided, okay, we're good. He's going to be our kicker. And I believe it was Kai Forbath who they let go to make room for Lutz. And he was the guy who finally stopped that revolving door kicker that had existed in New Orleans for basically a decade. The point being, and then Peyton talked about that last week. He didn't reference who the kicker was. He didn't reference the situation. I went back and looked it up. But the point being is that when you have somebody who in his past has been able to solve a problem a certain way, that's why he isn't panicking over the kicker situation, even though a lot of people are, because he's looking around, he's seeing, okay, there are currently 46 kickers under contract with NFL teams, right? So 14 of them are going to be cut. And that doesn't even account for the guys like Mason Crosby, Ryan Suckup, Robbie Gould, who don't have jobs right now. Zane Gonzalez is in San Francisco. He's almost certainly not making that team unless Jake Moody is a bust. Right?
Right.
So, in other words, Peyton can kind of sit back and say, all right, we're going to watch Elliott Fry, see if he can prove worthy of the role, give him the first shot. But we're going to be looking around at all these other kickers. I mean, you've got those kickers that aren't with teams right now. You've got Gonzalez, who's probably going to lose competition, but he can kick. You've got got 3 kickers in Detroit right now, one of whom was splendid in the XFL this season, Romo. So he knows there are possibilities. He's got to, and while everyone else is panicking, this is what you can do when you've been a head coach for 16 years and you had a lot of success. You just be like, oh, okay,
yeah,
all right, we're gonna watch. It's like my man Pep, to make a soccer reference, Pep Guardiola. So
I thought you were talking about Pep Hamilton. I was like, oh, I love Pep Hamilton.
He's a good coach too.
He is. Should be a head coach. He should be.
Why isn't he? It's a quarterback guru.
I know. Why isn't he is a large conversation.
Yeah, we could do an entire show on that one. We could throw an awful lot of people under the bus as to why Pep Hamilton's not a head coach.
We could.
He should be a head coach somewhere. I digress. Anyway, that's one that ticks me off.
When this league is built on quarterback play.
That's one that ticks me off because Pep Hamilton's resume is exactly what you want.
Yes.
You're saying you want coaches to be.
Yep.
And yet he doesn't have a head coach.
Pam Hamilton, in a different situation, would be fast-tracked to be a head coach.
Yeah.
Absolutely fast-tracked. And instead, we're sitting here just wondering if it's ever going to happen. Okay. So you listen to Sean Payton, and now I'm actually...
You know something crazy?
What's that?
You know where he's working right now? Nowhere. Houston Texans didn't bring him back.
Sean Payton, give him a call, right?
An extra coach, why not? Hey.
You could do it.
Yeah, you could.
Assistant, head coach, quarterback coach, all sorts of titles. There's plenty of titles, everybody.
Yeah. Well, they already have an assistant to the head coach, but you could. Is Mike Westhoff, is he an assistant head coach or an associate head coach?
I thought it was assistant head coach.
Okay. Well, he's basically the second in command.
Mm-hmm. Which you want, a veteran guy like that.
That's really, I mean, he's terrific in that job. Actually, you watch him with special teams, you can see it. He's a wizard at work.
A wizard at work.
Is Westhoff. I'm reading his book, by the way.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Fascinating. He
probably folled you on Twitter when he got hired, or he might have followed you before then.
He's an interesting dude, and I mean that in a really good way. I'm looking forward to hopefully chatting with him here at some point.
What's your favorite football book?
My favorite football book.
Mm-hmm. I like Scouting Principles. I like Take Your Eye Off the Ball. Shout out Pat Kerwin and Steve Belichick.
Take Your Eye Off the Ball is probably the one that in the last 15 years has influenced how I watch the game the most.
It influences how I chart plays. I learned how to chart plays because of Take Your Eye Off the Ball.
This is really old school, and I know this guy's name is probably not regarded with a lot of fondness by old school Bronco fans, but the old Thinking Man's Guide to Football by Paul Zimmerman back in the day was one that I devoured when I was a kid. So, but I say people around here don't think of him highly because he's generally regarded as the person who kept Randy Gradishar out of the Hall of Fame and questioned the validity of his performance and his tackle totals.
Right.
In the Hall of Fame discussion room. That's why. So if you didn't know why his name is mud among old school Bronco fans, now you do.
And in Sports Illustrated, he was Dr. Z. Am I remembering that correctly?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
There you go.
And also, ESPN had him on discussing the draft a bit back in the 1980s.
Okay. Yes, they did. Yeah, that's right. That's right. They had him at the table, right?
About Dan Marino.
I can't remember. Use the Google machine on that one. I know.
I think we found.
You found it?
Yeah, because it's under the headline, "Let's all laugh at these brutally bad NFL draft day takes." Let's see here. Well, it's the
Washington to follow as we conclude round.
You want to just play the clip here?
Your selection.
They picked Dan Marino.
Champion Western Mexican. Selection announcement for the selection of Danny Marino. I don't know who is going to work with him down there. Where is the great quarterback coaching genius of the Dolphins? I know Arns Barber's a great defensive coach. I don't see where he's going to get this great coaching that's going to overcome problems he's got. I mean, certainly that long-range projection down the line, and I think they need help in other directions. Maybe they felt that what they wanted wasn't there, and they couldn't get that help. But I really don't understand.
Didn't understand the pick. Also, what kind of coaching you're going to get down there? The head coach was freaking Don Shula. That's the thing. Like, Don Shula already had a Hall of Fame resume by spring of 1983.
Mm-hmm.
Already won 2 Super Bowls, and he'd taken the Dolphins to 4 Super Bowls in, at the time, 13 years on the job.
And as we've talked, he did it in different ways.
Did it in different ways. I mean, that 82 team that went to Super Bowl 17 lost to Washington. Killer bees on defense, had freaking David Woodley at quarterback. I mean, okay, there's the start of why it was logical to draft a quarterback. Your starter was David Woodley. David Woodley, who I believe completed 4 passes in Super Bowl 17. Anyway.
Wow.
So yeah, Dr. Z, rest in peace. Again, nothing but love for the thinking man's guide to football, but everybody misses on some takes. And that was a big fat miss for Dr. Z.
That was a big fat miss.
Anyway.
But go get Scouting Methods, Steve Belichick. Go get Take Your Eye Off the Ball with the DVD from Pat Kerwin. And learn how to chart plays, everybody. It'll change the way that you watch football.
It requires a lot of concentration. The thing is, so if you're going to do it, that's where, okay, you're watching the game at home.
Yes.
By yourself. Not with
this isn't like
you're
baseball.
Not watching with buddies or family. No. You're sitting there in front of the TV. Like in baseball where they'd say, for those of you scoring at home, if you're scoring at home, I have to.
If you're at the ballpark scoring, that's a different thing. Although they don't hand out scorecards anymore at Coors Field. They stopped a year ago, I think.
Well, they don't. What do you mean they don't hand them out? Like you have to buy them anyway.
They used to hand them out, I believe. One of our kids here. It's always fascinating when one of these producer kids that is at the fan, they're like, "I love baseball." I'm like, "You're 20." Like, why? So
it suits some people. Different strokes for different folks. The savage ballet that is pro football, quote Lisa Simpson. It's not for everybody.
I like that.
She does say at one point, "What could be better than the savage ballet that is pro football?" Well, turns out for Homer, it's gambling that makes it better.
All right.
Lisa has a gift for predicting the games, as it turns out.
Roport says, I appreciate Cecil and Mace, even when it's off-roading somewhere.
This whole show has been off-roading.
We started off track. It's my bad. As the driver, it's my bad. I took us off-road today, Mace. I apologize.
The whole fashion thing?
With everything. I think the Shrine Bowl and traveling in Vegas and
Frisco.
Yeah.
I don't know any good restaurants in Frisco.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Nate says way off track today, boys. All right. We'll be better tomorrow. We promise.
I know FC Dallas plays out in Frisco, but they're not going to be in season. And, so anyway, I couldn't go to a match. You wouldn't go with me anyway because you don't.
I'd go with you.
You would watch a soccer game with me.
Yes.
We'll have to try that sometime.
We would try it.
Do you want me to explain it to you?
Sure.
Okay.
I think it'd be fascinating. All I know is one time I watched the World Cup and spent 4 hours and nobody scored. And I was like, oh,
wait.
Every 4 years, Americans pretend to care.
4 hours? I mean, even if the match goes in extra time and penalties, you're still in and out in maximum 2 hours, 40 minutes. What was going on there?
It seemed like 4 hours.
Oh.
It seemed like forever.
Okay. All right. You know what?
But if I was with you and you could tell me about it, I would sit there and I would actually watch.
And I can say this because it's going to tie it back to American football. The title of Pat Kerwin's book, Take Your Eye Off the Ball, is very instructive for watching soccer. Take your eye off, sit back, watch how the players are moving, watch who's going to what use they're making of space. Okay. Because that's what soccer is trying to create space to operate. Because when you have space, you have freedom. That's when you can get creative. That's when you can start to make things happen. And that's why people wonder, okay, why are they passing it backwards? They're trying to create space. They're trying to elongate the opposing team and get them spread out a little bit. Like instead of packing it back in, get them to move around and create some space upfield, and then you start moving it up. Anyway.
Okay. So to tie a bow on today's program, we learned they signed Nick Williams.
Yes.
We learned that there's going to be more than one Joker. So, and Greg Dulcich can play everybody. So everyone just calm
Are
down.
you afraid
Greg
of people
Dulcich is
flaming
good.
you for your Dulcich
No,
name?
I don't care about that. It's just like when you say something and people misconstrue it. You said Greg Dulcich sucks. Nope. Never said that. I just said, hey, everybody, let's watch what Adam Troutman is doing.
We're
Again,
saying slow the roll a little
and
bit.
it complicates things because we can't say what we're seeing. Okay. Like, I hate to pull that card, like you didn't see practice and I did, but like at the end of the day, if I could tell you what we saw, you might have a different tune.
How many pages of notes do you have? I mean, I've got 15,
16, 17.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a combined 32 pages of notes on practice that we really can't do anything with at this point.
Yeah.
Except drop hints.
There you go. That's it. Orange and Blue today. We are presented by Sean Ponda. He's Andrew Mason. Follow him on Twitter at Mace Denver. I am at Cecil Lammey.
Our pre-camp pieces where we tell you guys to keep your eye on are, because we're not going to say, we can't really say what happened, but we can tell you who to keep your eye on.
I thought you were going to go Jerry Maguire, and I'm not going to do what everyone thinks I'm going to do. Freak out, man.
Oh,
was that Half Baked or Jerry Maguire? It was both.
Oh, I thought Jerry Maguire was like, not only help me help you, but when
he got fired and he's leaving because Half Baked did it. Who's coming with me?
The fish is coming with me. Who's coming with me? And then of course
Jan, thank you, Jan. That's Half Baked.
Yeah. It's Dorothy Boyd, thank you, because that's Renee Zellweger's character.
Dorothy Boyd.
Jerry Maguire.
Okay.
Do we consider Jerry Maguire a sports movie or a rom-com?
It's both. It can be both, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely has to count as a rom-com.
I want the sequel though. Because Lee Steinberg, who it's based off of, and is a friend of ours, like he overcame alcoholism. He had 2 quarterbacks that brought him back. One that made it, one that didn't, famously. Patrick Mahomes and Paxton Lynch. Those were his 2 quarterbacks, and Lee made a comeback.
Back-to-back years.
Now he's a super agent again. Yeah. So I want the Jerry Maguire sequel where he gets everything. He gets the girl, gets the job, gets the client, loses it all, and then comes back. Shout out Lee Steinberg.
Okay, so who brings him back? Is it like Rod Tidwell's kid grows up to be a prospect?
I like that.
Stud quarterback
prospect? Or it could be Cushman's kid. So he's got Cushman's kid and Tidwell's kid, and he ends up being the agent for both of them, and one makes it, one doesn't.
Okay.
And it would, since you want conflict, Tidwell's kid doesn't make it. That's what you'd want. You want conflict.
I figured the conflict would come from
Cush turning his back on him.
And that was Jason Bateman, right? Was it? I don't know.
I don't believe so.
No, there a guy that looked like Jason Bateman.
A little bit, yeah.
Who did play Cush?
But that would be the way to write it. You want to write it with conflict. So the conflict would be Cushman's kid and Tidwell's kid, and then
Jerry O'Connell.
Yeah, you're right.
Looks like
yeah, a little
Bateman.
bit, a little bit. Not as funny.
Yeah, but Jerry O'Connell and Jason Bateman.
But wouldn't you want to watch that?
Got confused.
Wouldn't you want to watch that? Jerry Maguire 2.
Yeah.
The comeback.
Okay. Is he still with Dorothy? They get divorced.
Divorced. Again, conflict. What makes it more?
Her kid? What is he doing?
Maybe he's the prospect. Maybe he runs a team.
Ooh.
Yeah, you'd have to age it up, see where the age would be, but because you want conflict, like what creates the most conflict in a story? Jerry Maguire's ex-wife's son is the head coach of a team or general manager.
So maybe Jerry and Dorothy get divorced.
This is a pitch meeting, by the way, everybody.
And the result is her son, who showed off the arm, right?
It did.
Bob Sugars. Conflict. And then we bring Bob Sugar back.
Yes.
What's Jay Moore doing these days anyway?
I'll leave that one alone. Anyway,
what?
I think BK and him are friends. So
BK is very special.
He is very special. He's Andrew Mason. I'm Cecil Lammey. Thank you. And I'm sorry, I guess.
I'm sorry for this show.
Kind. No, you're appreciated. Stay tuned.
We actually set a record for viewers last month on
this
show, for our show. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for indulging us. Look at all that.
You got fired up about Jerry Maguire too.
Fired about it. I've got my glasses are fogging over. Anyway, stay frosty.